The viewing screens across 1,000 worlds flickered to life, all tuned to the same broadcast. In the center of Apex 7 Station, the Galactic Coliseum rose like a monument to violence. Its walls were reinforced titanium, scarred from centuries of blood sport. Today, the arena would host something the galaxy had been anticipating for weeks. Ambassador Chin stood in the delegation chamber, his face carefully neutral as he read the formal challenge document for the third time. The words hadn't changed. The Vorn hierarchy demanded that humanity prove its worth through combat or accept classification as a subsidiary species. It was an old tradition, one that many species had faced when joining the galactic community. Most chose to negotiate. A few chose to fight. Chin had tried negotiating for 2 months. The Vor refused every compromise. Across the arena floor, Kroth-Zar waited. He was magnificent in the way that apex predators are magnificent. 12 feet of armored muscle, with 4 limbs that ended in bone blades sharp enough to cut through steel. His exoskeleton gleamed black under the arena lights, and when he roared, the sound made the observation glass vibrate. Kroth-Zar had killed 47 challengers in this arena. The Vorn were proud of their champion. They expected number 48 today. The alien crowds filled the stadium seats. Thousands of species represented. Insectoid clixions clicked their mandibles excitedly. The aquatic Delphi watched from fluid-filled observation tanks. Even the typically peaceful Ajani had sent representatives, curious to see how the soft-skinned humans would respond. The betting pools had been open for days. Odds heavily favored Kroth-Zar. Humans were known for their technology, their diplomacy, their strange attachment to other species. They were not known for combat prowess. In the preparation chamber beneath the arena, Captain Sarah Mitchell checked her boots one last time. She wore simple combat fatigues, no armor, no visible weapons. Beside her, a German shepherd sat attention, ears forward, eyes alert. Apollo's tags jingled softly as he shifted his weight. Sarah placed a hand on his head, and the dog leaned into her touch. "They think this is about strength," she said quietly. Apollo's tail thumped once against the floor. The chamber door opened. A Clixion official entered, its translator device blinking. "Human champion, it is time. I must inform you that bringing an animal companion is unusual. The regulations do not forbid it, but I question the wisdom. Kroth-Zar will not distinguish between you and your pet." Sarah stood, and Apollo rose with her, moving to her left side without command. "He's not a pet," she said. "He's my partner." The official's antennae twitched in what might have been confusion or concern. It led them through the tunnels toward the arena entrance. The sound of the crowd grew louder with each step. A rolling wave of alien voices, speaking in hundreds of languages. The roar of Kroth-Zar echoed through the stone passages, a sound designed by evolution to freeze prey in their tracks. Apollo's ears flicked back, but he maintained pace with Sarah, his shoulder even with her leg. The gate ahead began to rise, revealing the bright lights of the arena floor. Sarah could see Kroth-Zar across the sand, his forearms spread wide in a dominance display. The crowd's noise reached a fever pitch. She heard the confusion in their voices as she stepped into the light, with only a dog beside her. The announcer's voice boomed across the stadium in translated standard. "The human champion enters. Captain Sarah Mitchell of Earth, accompanied by a domesticated animal?" The last words carried disbelief. Laughter rippled through sections of the crowd. Ambassador Chin watched from the diplomatic box, his hands gripped tight on the railing. Beside him, a Vorn official radiated smug satisfaction. "Your species disappoints, Ambassador. We expected at least a warrior. You sent a woman, and a beast barely half her size." Chin didn't respond. He'd met Sarah Mitchell 3 times during the preparation period. He'd watched her credentials, her service record, the recommendations from every commanding officer she'd ever had. More importantly, he'd watched her with Apollo. He'd seen something in that partnership that made him believe humanity had a chance. He hoped he was right. Sarah walked to the center of the arena. Kroth-Zar approached from the opposite side, each step shaking the sand. He towered over her, his shadow swallowing both human and dog. The champion made a sound that the translators rendered as contemptuous laughter. "This is your answer?" Kroth-Zar's voice rumbled. This is Earth strength? Sarah looked up at the massive warrior. Apollo sat her side, completely still, eyes fixed on the Vorn. She spoke one word, clear enough for every translator in the stadium to catch. Watch! The bell rang. The challenge began. Krozar charged the moment the bell's echo faded. His 4 limbs propelled him across the sand with terrifying speed, bone blades extended. The crowd leaned forward in their seats, expecting the fight to end in seconds. Humans were fragile. Everyone knew this. Sarah didn't run. She shifted her weight slightly, her right hand moving in a subtle gesture at her hip. Apollo moved instantly, circling left while Sarah went right. The pattern broke Krozar's direct line of attack. The Vorn warrior had to choose a target, and in that split second of hesitation, both human and dog had repositioned. The first strike missed by inches. In the diplomatic box, Ambassador Chin released a breath he hadn't known he was holding. Beside him, the Vorn official's confidence flickered. Lucky, the alien muttered. On the arena floor, Krozar spun to track Sarah. She was moving backward, her eyes never leaving the warrior, but something was wrong. She wasn't watching Krozar's upper arms, where the killing blows would come from. She was watching the dog. Apollo's ears were forward, his body tense. His nose track sent invisible to every other creature in the stadium. When Krozar's muscles tensed for another charge, Apollo knew it 3 seconds before the warrior moved. A soft sound escaped the dog's throat, too quiet for the crowd to hear, but Sarah heard it. She was already moving before Krozar's feet left the ground. The Vorn champion's second attack hit empty air. Confusion rippled through the alien spectators. A 3-eyed Delphi in the commentary booth spoke into the broadcast system. The human appears to have unusual reflexes, but this cannot last. Krozar has superior strength, superior speed, superior reach. The second commentator, a Klikshan veteran, clicked its mandibles thoughtfully. Watch the animal. It is doing something. Sarah's mind was calm, focused. She'd trained for this her entire adult life, though never in an alien arena. She remembered the first day she met Apollo, 3 years ago at the K-9 training facility. He'd been 8 weeks old, all paws and ears, tumbling over his own feet. The instructor had told her that German shepherds had been bred for over a century to work with humans, to think alongside humans, to become extensions of human will. It had taken 6 months before Apollo understood every one of her hand signals. It had taken another year before she understood every sound he made, every shift in his posture. By the time they deployed together, they could communicate in complete silence. Apollo could detect threats by scent from 50 meters away. Sarah could read his body language and know exactly what he was sensing. They had tracked criminals through urban environments, through forests, through conditions where human senses failed. They had never worked alone. They had always been a team. Krozar was beginning to understand something was wrong. He changed tactics, moving slower, more deliberately. He feinted left, then struck right. Sarah should have fallen for it. But Apollo's ears had tracked the warrior's true intention to the sound of shifting sand, the intake of breath. The dog moved, and Sarah read the movement like text on a page. The crowd grew quieter. The mockery had faded, replaced by uncomfortable attention. A young Ashani in the upper seat spoke to her companion. They move like one creature. How is this possible? Krozar roared in frustration and charged again, this time committing fully to overwhelming force. He would crush the human through sheer power. But Sarah dropped low, rolling under his attack while Apollo circled high, forcing the Vorn to track 2 targets simultaneously. When Krozar turned to follow Sarah, Apollo was there, snapping at the warrior's rear limb. Not hard enough to injure through the armor, but enough to distract. The warrior spun toward the dog, and Sarah was moving again, picking up a handful of sand and throwing it toward Krozar's face. The Vorn's protective membrane snapped shut automatically, blinding him for 2 precious seconds. It was enough time to reposition. The Klikshan commentator's voice carried a note of revelation. I understand now. This is pack hunting. Humans did not evolve as solitary predators. Across the galaxy, billions watched as the truth began to emerge. The human wasn't weak. She was half of something greater. The dog wasn't a pet. He was a partner forged through 40,000 years of shared evolution. Wolves had hunted alongside humans when both species struggled to survive Earth's harsh climates. They had become dogs, and dogs had become family. And somewhere in that ancient partnership, both species had learned to think as one. Sarah made another hand signal, barely a twitch of her fingers. Apollo responded instantly, moving to her right flank. They repositioned again, keeping Krofzar off balance, never allowing him to land a solid blow. The Vorn warrior stood in the center of the arena, breathing hard. For the first time in his career, Krofzar felt something unfamiliar. He felt hunted. Krofzar's frustration boiled over into rage. He slammed all four fists into the arena floor, creating a shockwave that rippled through the sand. The crowd roared in approval. This was the dominance display they had come to see. This was a champion they knew. But Sarah and Apollo had already moved apart, splitting his attention once more. The shockwave passed harmlessly between them. The arena master, watching from the control booth, made a decision. This fight was lasting too long for a human opponent. The crowd needed spectacle. He pressed a series of buttons, and the arena floor began to change. Metal barriers rose from beneath the sand, creating walls and obstacles. Weapons racks emerged from hidden panels, offering blades and clubs to any fighter quick enough to reach them. The Vorn official in the diplomatic box smiled. Now your champion will learn what true combat means. Krofzar trained in complex environments. He will use every advantage. Ambassador Chen said nothing, but he leaned forward slightly. He'd read something in Sarah's file about urban warfare training. Krofzar moved immediately toward the nearest weapon rack, his longer stride covering ground faster than Sarah could run. He grabbed a massive club designed for species his size, swinging it experimentally. The weapon was as long as Sarah was tall. One solid hit would end the fight. Sarah didn't race for weapons. Instead, she moved toward the barriers, Apollo matching her stride. Her hand flickered in a signal, and the dog broke left, disappearing behind a metal wall. To the crowd, it looked like the human had just lost her only advantage. Krofzar charged toward Sarah's position, the club raised high. He rounded the barrier, expecting to find her cornered. She wasn't there. A sound behind him made the warrior spin. Apollo stood 10 meters away, ears forward, staring at the Vorn with complete focus. The champion moved toward the dog, and Sarah appeared from behind a different barrier, moving quickly toward a weapon rack. Krofzar spun again, forced to choose. He went after Sarah, the more dangerous target in his mind. But Apollo was already moving, circling to the maze of barriers in a path that would cut off the warrior's angle of attack. The dog sent a smell track both Sarah and Krofzar through the metal walls, his ears picking up footsteps that the warrior thought were silent. Sarah reached the weapon rack and grabbed something small. Not a blade, not a club. She took a whistle, the kind used for training animals. Several alien spectators made sounds of confusion. What use was a whistle in combat? The Delphi commentator spoke into the broadcast. The human is making unusual choices. I do not understand her strategy. The Klixian commentator clicked thoughtfully. She is not fighting. She is hunting. There is a difference. Sarah blew the whistle once, a sharp piercing note. Apollo's response was immediate. The dog appeared from behind a barrier, positioning himself to drive Krofzar toward a corner formed by two walls. The warrior realized the trap too late. When he tried to backtrack, Sarah was there, blocking the exit. Not attacking, just present. Just forcing him to choose a different path. They were hurting him. Krofzar had hunted prey across a dozen worlds. He knew what herding meant. Predators herded prey toward killing zones, toward traps, toward exhaustion. But he was a predator, not prey. He was Vorn. He was champion. He roared and smashed through one of the barriers, metal shrieking as it bent under his strength. The crowd cheered at the display of raw power. Krofzar emerged in an open section of the arena, finally free of the maze. Apollo was waiting. The dog didn't attack. He stood 20 meters away, perfectly still except for his eyes, which tracked every movement the warrior made. Sarah emerged from the barrier seconds later, flanking from the opposite side. Krofzar's breathing had become heavier. The fight had lasted longer than any of his previous matches. His armor was designed to withstand strikes, not to provide endurance for extended pursuit. Meanwhile, Sarah showed no signs of exhaustion. She was built for this. Humans had evolved to run prey down across vast distances, to outlast faster and stronger animals through pure persistence. And now the arena understood what was happening. This wasn't a duel. This was a hunt, and the roles had been reversed. A human and a dog, two species that had perfected cooperative hunting over thousands of generations, were using the arena as their hunting ground. Krafzar gripped his club tighter and made a decision. He would end this with overwhelming violence. He would strike the dog first, removing the human's advantage, then finish the woman. He charged toward Apollo with every bit of remaining speed. Sarah's whistle cut through the air, sharp and commanding. Apollo moved. Apollo dodged left as the club came down, but Krafzar had anticipated the movement. The warrior's second strike came faster than expected, catching the dog's hind leg with a glancing blow. Apollo yelped and stumbled, rolling across the sand before coming to rest against the barrier. The arena fell silent. Sarah's head turned toward her partner, and something changed in her expression. The tactical calm disappeared, replaced by something colder, something ancient. Every human watching across the galaxy recognized it instantly. Every alien felt a chill they didn't understand. Ambassador, Chin gripped the railing harder. He'd seen that look before, in old war footage from Earth's bloody history. It was a look soldiers wore when their squad mates fell. It was a face of protection, instinct overriding survival instinct. Apollo struggled to his feet, favoring his injured leg, but still standing. He limped toward Sarah's position, determined to continue fighting. Sarah made a sharp hand gesture, the command for stay. The dog stopped, torn between obedience and the need to protect his human. Krafzar laughed, the sound echoing through the stadium. Your beast is broken. You are alone now, human. This ends. Sarah picked up a metal rod from the broken barrier, weighing it in her hands. It wasn't much of a weapon, but it would do. She didn't respond to Krafzar's words. She simply began walking toward him. The warrior expected her to be cautious, to retreat now that her advantage was gone. Instead, she advanced. Her movements were different now, more direct. She wasn't hurting anymore. She wasn't strategizing for the long game. She was coming for him. Krafzar swung the massive club in a wide arc meant to keep her at distance. Sarah ducked under it, rolling forward and coming up inside his reach. The metal rod struck against his lower arm joint, not hard enough to break through armor, but hard enough to send a shock through the limb. She was targeting weak points. The warrior backpedaled, surprised. The human followed, relentless. Every time he swung the club, she was somewhere else, and each time she repositioned, she struck at a joint, a seam, a vulnerable spot. She wasn't trying to overpower him. She was wearing him down, exploiting every weakness she could find. The Klikshan commentator's voice carried a note of concern. The human's behavior has changed. This is more aggressive, more dangerous. In the crowd, a Delphi scientist spoke to her colleagues. I have studied human biology. They have high levels of adrenaline response when threatened. But this is different. This is protective aggression. She is not fighting for herself anymore. Krafzar tried to create distance, but Sarah gave him none. When he moved backward, she pressed forward. When he tried to circle, she cut him off. The human who had seemed so focused on survival was now the aggressor, and the champion didn't know how to respond. He swung wildly, putting all his strength into a blow that would crush her if it connected. Sarah stepped inside the arc again, too close to the club to be effective. The metal rod struck his knee joint once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. Krafzar's leg buckled slightly. For the first time in his career, the champion felt pain that mattered. Sarah's voice was quiet, but clear enough for the nearby sensors to catch. You hurt my partner. That was a mistake. She moved with precision that came from years of combat training. But underneath the technique was something more primal. Humans had spent millions of years as prey animals, running from larger predators. But they had also spent thousands of years as apex predators themselves, protecting their pack at any cost. Evolution had built both instincts into their DNA. Krovzar's breathing was labored now. The endurance issue was becoming critical. Vorn were built for short, explosive combat. Humans were built to keep going long after other species quit. And an injured human protecting their pack was something the galaxy had only read about in historical files from Earth's wars. The warrior tried another charge, but his movements were slower. Sarah sidestepped and struck the same knee joint again. This time, the Vorn went down on one knee. He caught himself with his upper arms. But the position was vulnerable. Apollo limped forward despite the stay command, unable to watch his human fight alone. Sarah didn't reprimand him. She simply placed herself between the dog and Krovzar, a living shield. The crowd was no longer cheering. They were watching something they hadn't expected. The soft species, the diplomatic species, the species that bonded with animals and cried at sad stories, was showing them a different side. Krovzar looked up at Sarah standing over him, and for the first time he understood what he was facing. Not a weak opponent, not prey, a monster who loved. Krovzar pushed himself back to standing, all four arms shaking with effort. His armor was dented, his movement sluggish. Across from him, Sarah stood with Apollo at her side. The dog was injured but alert, ears forward, ready to fight despite the pain. The human's expression hadn't softened. She was waiting. The warrior raised his club one more time, but the weapon felt heavier than before. His muscles burned with exhaustion. He fought for less than 20 minutes, but it felt like hours. Every time he thought he had the advantage, they adapted. Every time he created distance, they closed it. Every time he focused on one, the other became the threat. He charged again because it was all he knew how to do. Sarah didn't dodge this time. She stepped forward to meet him, the metal rod coming up to deflect the club's path just enough. The weapons connected with a sharp clang, and the club went wide. Apollo moved in from the side, teeth flashing toward Krovzar's lower leg. The warrior kicked out, but Apollo had already retreated. The dog's limp was less pronounced now, adrenaline masking the pain. Sarah pressed the attack, striking at Krovzar's upper arm joint. The rod bent from the impact, but the damage was done. The warrior's right arm hung useless. The crowd watched in stunned silence. This wasn't supposed to happen. Krovzar had never lost. The Vorn were apex predators, dominant through strength and ferocity. But strength meant nothing if you couldn't land a hit. Ferocity meant nothing if your opponent refused a break. Ambassador Chen allowed himself a small smile. The Vorn official beside him had gone quiet. His earlier confidence completely evaporated. On the arena floor, Krovzar stumbled backward. His vision was blurring from exhaustion. His lungs burned. He'd killed 47 opponents in this arena, most within the first 5 minutes of combat. He'd never faced anything that simply wouldn't stop, wouldn't tire, wouldn't give up. Sarah whistled once, and Apollo circled left. They were hurting again, backing the warrior into a corner. Krovzar tried to break through, but his body wouldn't respond fast enough. When he swung the club, Sarah was already inside his guard. When he tried to use his lower arms, Apollo was there, forcing him to redirect. The champion's back hit the arena wall. He had nowhere left to go. Sarah stood 5 meters away, the bent metal rod still in her hand. Apollo sat her left side, tongue out, panting but ready. Neither advanced for the killing blow. They simply waited. Krovzar understood what they were offering. Surrender or continue until his body gave out completely. The Vorn had no word for surrender in their language, but they had a gesture. Slowly, painfully, he lowered all four arms and placed his forehead against the sand. The arena exploded with noise. Shock, disbelief, excitement, fear. Every emotion rippled to the crowd at once. The bell rang, signaling the end of combat. Medical teams rushed onto the floor. Sarah dropped the metal rod and went immediately to Apollo, kneeling beside him to examine his injured leg. Her hands were gentle as she felt for broken bones, her voice soft as she spoke to him. The dog's tail wagged weakly and he licked her face. The Delphi commentator's voice trembled as she spoke. In all recorded history of the Galactic Coliseum, Krovzar has never yielded. The human has won. The Cliction added, but note what she does now. She does not celebrate. She does not acknowledge the crowd. She cares only for her wounded companion. This tells us everything about humanity. Medical drones approached Sarah, scanners extended toward Apollo. She allowed them close but kept her hand on the dog's head, reassuring him. A medical team helped Krozar from the arena floor, the once mighty champion needing support to walk. An alien reporter pushed through the crowd of officials, its camera drone hovering nearby. The translator picked up its question clearly. Captain Mitchell, how did you tame such a creature to fight beside you? Sarah looked up from treating Apollo's leg, her eyes still carrying that protective edge. We didn't tame them. 40,000 years ago, wolves and humans made a choice to survive together. We hunted together. We shared food. We protected each other's young. They became dogs, and dogs became family. Apollo isn't tamed. He's pack. There's a difference. She returned her attention to the dog, checking his injury one more time. Taming breaks something. Partnership builds something. Humans have always understood that. Ambassador Chin descended to the arena floor, relief evident on his face. Behind him, alien dignitaries whispered among themselves, reassessing everything they thought they knew about humanity. The species that seemed weak for loving animals had just demonstrated why that love made them dangerous. Sarah stood, helping Apollo to his feet. The dog leaned against her leg, and together they walked toward the exit, not as master and pet, not as warrior and weapon, as pack, as it always been,